Let's discuss the concept of application program interfaces, also called APIs. I'm going to discuss it actually a little bit backwards. I'm going to talk about a specific instance or example of an API and then step back and look at it, what it is conceptually. Here we have a website, cbs.com. And let's say cbs.com wants to show a 10-day forecast on its home page on the website. They want people like Bob to be able to log into cbs.com and they'll see a 10-day forecast for wherever they are. Bob happens to be in Louisville, Kentucky. So cbs.com is not in the business of running a giant weather collection service. What they'd like to do is have it so that when Bob logs in, they can tell the actual physical location of Bob's computer, and they could show on the screen the forecast just for Bob's area, just for Louisville. But again, they don't want to have a big giant collection of data about all the weather forecasts for every city in America or around the world. But guess what? There is somebody who does that. Weather.com happens to do that. That's what they specialize in. So, Weather.com could say, hey, CBS.com, if you pony up a little bit of money, we will let you, whenever you want, have your website ask our website, what's the 10-day forecast for Louisville or Portland, Oregon, or Chechnya, or wherever in the world that we happen to have data for. You can ask and we'll send you that data, and then you can display it. So that'd be a pretty valuable thing. For tiny fractions of cents on every one of these, CBS could provide a personalized experience for people visiting its site. So how do they do it? A common way they do it is this. Weather.com has a special piece of software called an API, an application program interface. Now let's look at the word interface. Interface just means when two things come together. How do they interface? How do they dialogue? How do they communicate? How do they do it? The essential concept is this. The software programmers at Weather.com can create a special piece of software that has a connection to the internet. And they can publish a little guide that says, listen, if you are a website and you want a 10-day forecast, then you need to give us the following pieces of data. You need to give us, first, the zip code of the location you want the data for. And secondly, you need to give us your account number. And lastly, you need to give us your password. And this software is expecting that. So now the people that run the CBS.com software, they get this little publication, this little bit of data from Weather.com. They go, okay, well, let's write our software to take in the physical location from Bob's computer, or whoever it is that's logging in, look up their zip code, and storing the zip codes in America is a lot easier than storing all of the ongoing weather data for every place in the country over and over again. So this they can manage. They can manage tying an individual computer to a zip code. Okay, good, awesome. Well, we're paying money, so Weather.com gave us a username and they gave us a password. Now we have the zip, we have the username and the password. And so they use the internet, this interconnected system of computers, to send a request to that API software. It's called an API call that says, okay, here's the data in the exact format that you wanted. Here's my zip code. Here's my account number. Here's my password. I said username, I meant account number. Because the interface, the meeting between the requester and the API, CBS.com and the Weather.com API, because the format of the data sent in the API call matches what this API software needs, it can take those pieces of data and do what Weather.com does best and look up the actual 10-day forecast and then send that data back to CBS.com. It can put it on its screen, and Bob is a happy camper because he can see that it's not going to rain tomorrow and he can go golfing. So this meeting place, this point of contact between a requester of data from Weather.com and the actual provider of the data, weather.com, is called an interface, specifically an application program interface. So, now that you got that, let's step back to the more conceptual definition of an API. An API is a set of clearly defined communication methods between software programs. A software program is designed for a purpose. And within that program, how it accomplishes that purpose is the business of the computer software designer, the programmer. What is the business of other people, though, is how to access whatever that program, that computer program does, how to make use of it. Now, not all computer programs even need a thing like an API. They don't need a set of clearly defined communication methods between software programs, because not all computer software programs are meant to communicate with any other computer software programs. But a lot of them are. Let's take a typical example. You have a printer. You've all used printers. Some of you may like them. Some of you are saying and don't. I can't stand printers. What are you going to do? Here's the thing about printers. They actually have software inside them in almost every instance. A computer program on a tiny computer that helps monitor and operate that machine, because a printer's a machine. So this printer and the software inside it do need to receive and give communication to other software. For example, let's say on your computer you have a word processor. You're typing a document on a word processor. Just a specialized computer program that allows you to see a representation of the written words you want and will very often let you print them in paper form. So, the software from the word processor needs to know when I send this data from this document that someone made over to the printer, what format does that data need to be in? What comes first? How do I show what the page numbers are? How do I show if something's bold? In what order do I put the characters? Do I start at the last page first and move up to the first page? All of this is something that the creators of the printer, specifically the people who created the software for that printer, will have defined. And they will have published and given to, or made available to, the people that made the word processing software. Now, the people that make that word processing software will be able to say, okay, I can communicate with this. I know what order to put this in, so I can use this printer. Now, printers are a much more complex subject than that. But the basic principle is this, is the software on that printer needs to have data given to it in an exact format. That format is the API. It is a set of clearly defined communication methods between software programs. So a lot of you are going to become quite familiar with APIs as you move into software development and work on websites. Because as I showed you with the example with CBS.com and weather.com, APIs are a very, very common thing now in web development, making websites, making software that runs on the internet, that sort of thing. However, there are other areas where APIs really matter as well. And one of them is something that's pretty fundamental to how a computer works. Let me show you what that is. Back in some of the earlier videos where we were talking about how computers work, we discussed a thing called an operating system. The operating system is a specialized computer program, and it manages a lot of the basic elements that any computer needs to be an actual useful machine. It manages things like managing the memory of the computer as you move different data points around inside the memory, making sure that that process works correctly. It manages storing things in some of the storage devices, your hard drive, if you have an external, attach it with a wire sort of drive. How do you manage storing data? It manages things like input and output, receiving data from your keyboard or your mouse and making that data pass wherever it needs to. So you don't have to program those things, but your programs do have to use those things. How your program interacts with these is considered an API. Why? Because it is a system of clear and defined communication methods between software programs. What software programs? Well, the operating system, which is a software program, and whatever you're writing. Modern computer programming languages, as you'll find, make this process relatively easy. But knowing that there is in fact an API, and that the way you actually access some of these underlying elements of the software program called an operating system. Knowing that there's a way you have to access them will help you as a software developer. Again, you may not ever have to do anything complicated on this. Your computer program might say something like print and hello world. And that's pretty simple to understand. You don't need to know anything about how it actually takes that, translates it down to something that the operating system can use, and then in fact the central processing unit can use, uses this input-output computer program to actually display it on a screen. You don't need to know anything about that. But there is an API. Someone made the instructions on, well, if you want to print something, exactly how does the data have to be formatted and given to the section of the program that controls input and output so that it will display on the screen. Exactly how do you do that? There is an API. Depending upon what you end up doing as a software developer, you may very well enter into a job where you do work on APIs that actually access other existing programs. And the central thing you need to keep in mind is this. An API is just how do two programs talk to each other? And the only way they can talk to each other is if the methods of talking are clearly defined. They are not going to accept any ambiguity. If the format of the data that you give to another computer program doesn't match exactly what it's expecting, then it won't work. That's a basic principle of APIs. Jack Stanley, the other co-founder of the Tech Academy, and I put together this free video for you because we love to educate and help people. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did like this video, there are hundreds more like it, including our Tech Academy subscription service. The Tech Academy subscription is made up of hundreds of technology classes that you can study from home. These online, self-paced classes are more than just videos. They include articles, definitions, quizzes, and assignments, so you learn each subject thoroughly. There are subscription classes for beginners and experienced tech professionals alike. Plus, we have classes for adults and kids. You can subscribe at learncodinganywhere.com/Tech Academy subscription. That's learncodinganywhere.com/Tech Academy subscription. If you sign up now, we'll give you the first month of access for free.